That's a S-A-S-H-A. No, A. Still working on my learnings from last night. On behalf of Pearson, I'd like to welcome you to this morning's panel. We're delighted to sponsor this event, and we're also delighted to be attending and sponsoring the NEAS conference, and I'd like to extend our thanks to Anna and Patrick and Denise and all of the NEAS team for facilitating such a warm and collegial atmosphere where there's been a great deal of productive and collaborative conversations, and I'm sure we're just beginning that today. Pearson has been helping people learn English for some 263 years, which is quite a tradition, and all around the world we help learners make progress through their lives through learning English, providing frameworks, courseware and assessments to help people learn, to teach and to prove their English language ability. And we have some 16 million learners around the world who use Pearson English products, and many of those learners are, of course, in Asia. Across ASEAN, we have a growing network of PTE, or Pearson Test of English academic test centres, and I'm delighted to see some of our test centre partners on the stage today, ILF Jakarta and RMIT Melbourne, operating PTE academic test centres, and also very happy to announce that we'll be opening a new test centre in Johor Bahru, Malaysia later this month. So we're very excited to hear from the panel this afternoon. I've been asked by Anna to keep this short, so I will, and I'll hand over to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. The reason that we decided to invite these providers, these representatives of providers, to the NEAS conference and have a short panel, we've only got 40 minutes to go, is that we, at NEAS, we've been quality assuring centres offshore since 2006. We were invited to be part of a transnational activity in which we were looking out to see, as providers were, looking out to see how we can engage offshore as well as onshore with the provision of ELT support. And we were invited by the government, the Department of Industry and Education at the time, to participate in a transnational focused activity, and that's where we started. And since 2006, we have now endorsed over 50 providers offshore. Most of those providers have actually come to us, looking to us to endorse them, to provide quality assurance, because we are leaders in our region. And we do come across maybe some misunderstandings from our providers onshore who are wondering, why are we seeking to go offshore? Well, it's not that simple. We are not necessarily looking to leave Australia. What's happening is that there's an acknowledgement that we're all working together. And this is an opportunity for us to talk about how our offshore providers are still closely aligned and involved in the experiences of students who are either coming to Australia or are going to one day live in Australia, or providers who are now working offshore. So this is an opportunity for all of us to work as a community. And I guess before I start with talking to and giving the opportunity for our offshore providers to talk about their experiences, of course, I'm going to start way back in the beginning where we are now, and of course acknowledge the First Nations people of the Eora and Gadigal people on whose land we are today, and recognise their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd now like to invite our first provider that NEAS endorsed back in 2006 to talk about, and that's Denise Finney from Indonesia, and we thank you for being the very first one. That was a long time ago, and it was quite an interesting journey. I'd like, given that we're talking about community and the sharing, and we've had some wonderful opportunities over the last few days to talk about community and the more that we have that's the same rather than different. Can you share with us what your perspective is in Indonesia in terms of how important is it for your students to understand the similarities we have between the experience of education in Australia and the experiences they're having in Indonesia? What's the journey been like? Yes, you're on.
Sorry, the similarities, sorry?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
What are the similarities between education? So how are you preparing your students? Because many of your students are going to be studying in Australia. So how do you prepare them? And they're Indonesians, right? Yeah.
Well, I suppose the ILF emerged actually in 1989 out of an aid project in Indonesia. So the Australian government in the early 80s set up a school in Jakarta called the Australian Language Centre with the aim of preparing Indonesians who had won scholarships to study in Australia, the Australia Awards scholarships, to prepare them for studies in Indonesia. The ILF has grown out of that and does a lot of other things now, including general English teacher training, a lot of different things. But academic English for academic purposes is still very much key to what we do. I started off as an EAP teacher many, many moons ago. Indonesia's changing and changing very rapidly. Asia in general, the speed of change, I just don't think you can imagine how quickly things move. I'm from Northern Ireland and I go home and I still know all the neighbours and I still know the shops and you know, things are very slow to change. And living in Indonesia, you turn around and you can't remember what building was there last week. And so it's the same with their education systems. Things are changing very rapidly. But some things still remain very challenging. And I think, you know, traditionally the Indonesian education system has been very much rote learning. People haven't been encouraged to think critically, analytically. And I think that's still a challenge. Obviously, things are changing. The benign dictatorship of Suharto is yesterday's story. There's not the same political pressure to stop people thinking, which I think was very much a feature of the 80s and 90s in Indonesia. But I think the biggest challenge that Indonesian students face when they're coming overseas is that aspect of sort of critical analysis and taking a lot of different points of view and synthesizing arguments. That's still for them very much a challenge. And that's one of the things that our teachers focus on a lot.
Yeah, we have that experience here too. So when the students come to Australia, they still have that challenge. So I guess that's one thing that we have that's the same. Do you hear back from your students who've left you, go to Australia? Do they stay in touch with you? What happens to your students after they've left you?
Well, if they've come through the Australia Awards program, they've signed a contract. They have to return. They have no choice. No, many of them keep in touch, and so the sort of the broad. The ILF doesn't have an alumni association as such, but we have a wide range of students who keep in touch with us, come back and talk to previous students, tell them about their experiences over here. Many of them, I mean, the Australia Awards program started, I don't know, maybe 50 years ago. You know, back in the day, I think it was very much development oriented. Now, I think it's diplomacy meets business meets, you know, building relationships building relationships has always been a very strong part of the Australia Awards program wherever. So now we're seeing Australia Awards graduates, you know, as the Minister for Women's Empowerment or the Minister for Business in the last cabinet. So you are now meeting Australian graduates in positions of great influence, which is very interesting.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on helping to build the capacity of the country. What can our Australian providers learn about what's important for them to know about Indonesian students if they're coming into Australian centres?
Well, Well, I think now you're finding there are a lot more private students coming to Australia. I think that Australia remains the #1 destination for Indonesian students studying overseas at certificate or undergraduate or postgraduate level. But Indonesia is a huge country. It's 260 million people, 4th largest country in the world. But only, I don't know the statistics, but the recent statistics are saying that there are 70,000 Indonesian students studying overseas. So it's the smallest proportion. I mean, compared to even Malaysia, where the population is much, much smaller, but many more Malaysians are traveling overseas, studying overseas. Vietnam, other ASEAN countries are sending a much larger percentage. So Australia is #1 for Indonesian students, followed by Malaysia, I think it is. And I think Australia has a real opportunity here because there are surveys done of what are the key factors affecting people's choices of where to go to study. And for Indonesians, #1 is security. #2 is proximity. So unlike China, it'll be the university rankings, followed by security, followed by whatever. Indonesia, #2 is proximity, because homesickness is one of the biggest factors for Indonesian students overseas. So Australia, I think, has a real opportunity here because it is so close to Indonesia. Perceptions are that it's a fairly safe destination. I mean, America is getting a bad rep these days, whereas Australia is seen as a secure destination, seen as close. It's affordable, although university fees are perceived as pretty expensive nowadays, but in terms of proximity, it's affordable. So I think Australian universities, in terms of offering, I'm not so much perhaps the ALICOS sector, although that has a knock-on effect. If people are coming to study in colleges and universities, of course, they will need language preparation. But a lot of parents in Indonesia will keep their kids at home as long as possible, so that may well be something for, to look at language training, in-country language training in Indonesia could well be an opportunity. One of the disadvantages is a perception, in Indonesia anyway, that the Australian press loves to hate Indonesia. So I don't know, I don't think you as providers can do anything about that, but there certainly is a perception in Indonesia that the Australian press love to bash Indonesia whenever they get the chance.
I think the Australian press like to bash anyone, really. Okay, thank you, Denise. I'd like to ask, you've mentioned Malaysia a number of times. Sean, you're the latest international provider that's NEAS endorsed. Why did you choose to become endorsed through an Australian provider of quality assurance?
That's a good question. Proximity is definitely one of them. But generally, I think many of you know that Malaysians choose Australia. I think a lot of Australia is the second largest, most popular destination for further studies abroad by Malaysians. And I think it's a no-brainer that with the NEAS track record, we want to be hopefully associated with it. At ELS Malaysia, we are generally ASSET accredited, which is a continuing education accreditation from the US, but nothing like NEAS. And in country, in Malaysia itself, we don't have an accrediting body for ELT. We have very, very good accrediting bodies even before Singapore for higher education, called the MQA. But the many attempts that we've made to approach the MQA, the Malaysian Qualifications Agency, to even accredit us or at least recognize our standards in teaching of English, they said, no, you're below our pay grade. So we only look at higher education and above, everything up there. So NEAS was quite an obvious choice.
Thank you. And what do Malaysians think about studying in Australia?
I think there's a lot of perception. I think we have lots of friends. So I have lots of friends who study here and sometimes also make Australia their home. I think if anybody has started watching this YouTube show by Ronnie Chang called International Student, right? So you would know that there's a very clear difference between the types of Malaysian students or maybe ASEAN students who would come to Australia. One would be the middle income bracket or demographic who would choose to come here to study, to experience life, and maybe, just maybe, make a new life here. And then you've got the other, perhaps a little bit more affluent group who have family businesses back home. So the experience that they have is just to network, get some intel, and go back and help out again. So we've got very, very different opinions and different experiences or objectives when they come here.
Thank you. Thank you. Dan, you're working in Vietnam at RMIT. Vietnam is the country that has the most NEAS endorsed centres. They're not all with RMIT. However, I'm glad that you've been able to make it to Australia. Tell us about why students in Vietnam choose to enrol in an Australian provider like RMIT.
Yeah, so we're in a very unique position in that we were the first offshore university, international university in the country. So 2001 is when RMIT commenced operations in Vietnam. So we're very unique in that essentially we offer the same product, and degrees which are issued for students in RMIT Vietnam are actually issued by RMIT Melbourne, which is really significant. And without that, I don't think we would have been able to get started, because one of the big reasons for Vietnamese students to study in Australia, but also with Australian institutions like RMIT Vietnam, is really the value of the credential. I sense similarities between China and Vietnam. Even though they'll refuse to admit it, I think there are quite a lot of similarities culturally. Don't tell that to either country. They're not the best of neighbors. But there's a real, the society places a real value on credentials and qualifications. And it's such a competitive landscape. I'll talk more at 11:20 in Parkview, room number 1. But there's a real heavy competition for higher education. To give you an example, last year only 49% of people made it into university. So there's kind of a national university entrance exam, kind of like the Gaokao in China. And there were only enough slots in universities and colleges for 49%. So that alone kind of shows you how competitive. It's extremely competitive. And it's the same for the workplace. So one way that you can set yourself apart from the rest is to have a very valuable qualification. So Australia, the perception of Vietnamese people about Australia in terms of higher education is first and foremost quality. It really has a perception of being high quality. And number 2, it's also about the experience. So students come here not just for the piece of paper, although that is the primary reason, but there's a real sense of you can come to Australia, you can go to university, you can do your studies and get a great degree, but you can also experience a really nice quality of life, which is very different from Vietnam. And similar to what Sean said, there's a real chance for networking and kind of expanding people's network. So yeah, it has a real reputation for quality. And actually, Vietnam and Australia have a very long kind of diplomatic history. So I believe Australia was the first country to resume diplomatic ties. I think it was 1979-ish. They were the first major country to resume diplomatic ties, which really shows you that relationship has been really strong over the years.
So if some of these Australian providers here would like to engage more with Vietnamese students, what do you think they should be highlighting or promoting in their promotional material and in the way that they engage with Vietnamese students and agents?
Yeah, I'd say probably emphasize the things that are already known. So first and foremost, quality of education. Similar to maybe, I'm not sure about Malaysia, but similar to China, ranking is very important because that's one way of kind of showing off quality, I suppose. But yeah, I'd also heavily promote the Australian experience. And most of all, I'd probably recommend to emphasize the working aspect. Because like I said, it's so competitive in Vietnam for higher education and for jobs that one way people can stick out from the rest is to have some work experience from a country like Australia. So if there's any opportunities for, say, internships or work integrated learning or guaranteed jobs as part of their study program or something like that, that would really set you apart from other countries and from other providers. Again, it's all about making the degree and the experience make the Vietnamese students stand out from their peers when they go back.
Thank you, Dan. Next to you is Deborah, who's actually not working in an ASEAN country. It's sort of ASEAN +1 for today. Deborah's from the University of Wollongong in Dubai. I'm really fascinated to know, I've only learnt this morning that at the moment the number one nationality of students in your institution is Chinese. Tell us about why students choose to study at your centre, an Australian provider, in Dubai.
Well, I think with the Chinese students, they're quite Australia-facing, so they recognise the Australia brand. And I think the quality. The University of Wollongong has a very strong reputation for quality, and that's very valuable to the Chinese students. So yes, it's a strange kind of context because very few of our students are actually Emirati. We're almost like a language centre in the UK or Australia or America, where students are incoming or are part of the expat community in Dubai, which is 80% of the population. So we have, as you say, the majority of our students are actually from China, but we also have students from a very wide range of countries. From Russia, we have students from Iran, we have students from France, very, very, very wide student population.
And where do your students go after they finish with, certainly after they finish their English component of their course?
Yeah, well, we would like them to go into the University of Wollongong, obviously. We don't know. We're actually not very good at tracking them. We know the students who do go into the university because, as you say, we use them to come and talk to our students. They go to other universities in the UAE. They come to Australia. Some of them are with us for immigration purposes. So a very wide range of destinations, very wide range, very diverse body of students, really.
And do you? I've been to your centre, and I know there are other higher education providers in the precinct where your centre is. Is there a difference in the way that Australians teach? Is there an Australian way, and do the students do know that? Do they value it?
I think there is. We don't actually have any Australian teachers, and that's really the main reason I wanted to be here, because obviously I'm not Australian, and I'd never been to Australia before today, so I really wanted to come, and this has been incredibly useful for me to learn a bit about that, and I'm definitely going back. I'm not quite sure I can articulate it yet, but I'm ruminating on it, because I've definitely got some ideas from being here of what is Australian. Definitely quality. One of my colleagues recently just the other day in Wollongong made a comment about, and I won't say which country, graduates from a certain country coming out being more confident than competent, not from Australia. And he said, here we like to kind of knock them down a bit. By which I think he meant that Australian education is very rigorous and quality is very important. So I think that's definitely one of the things I'm taking back.
Thank you, Deborah. Ashley Irving, you live and work in Cambodia.
Yes.
For an Australian school.
Yes, correct.
What impact does your school have on Cambodians?
A little bit of history. We've been there for about 27 years since the UN forces came in to support the rebuilding of Cambodia back in the 90s. Originally sponsored by the Australian government, we ran Australia Awards programs around the country. When that funding was withdrawn, one of our enterprising teachers took over the school and started the business. and then eventually on-sold to IDP. I started 7 years ago. I walked in and saw, through 3 schools, we had over 6,000 students, and the sheer volume scared the living daylights out of me. I came from schools in Australia where we were excited, where we had 300 students. 7 years on, we've now got 21,000 students, and they're getting younger. The average age is about 16. English has been identified as a means for Cambodians to literally improve their lifestyle, and the parents are investing in their kids' futures. We've been there for 27 years. We have a very strong reputation, I believe, for quality and integrity. And NEAS has actually played quite a strong part in this, because one of the things that set us apart from competitors over the last 15 years was the rigour around hiring of teachers with qualifications, the facilities that we offer, making sure that they are suitable for students, and more recently around child protection. We've been working with the British governments and the Australian Federal Police to establish standards that are accepted in the West, but very unusual in emerging markets. And it's these points of differentiation that we're very clear about, and we work very hard to maintain. We are now getting into our 3rd generation of students. We have grandparents, parents and children who have come through ACE, which means we have very strong ties into the community. Cambodia is a very small place. You'll find yourself getting phone calls from, say, the Australian ambassador saying, can you please come and help us with a function? You'll get parents coming to see you. Everybody knows each other. With 1 or 2 phone calls, you can reach people in almost any business at any level of government, which is fantastic for getting things started. Not necessarily getting things done and completed. And we run these scholarship programs for the New Zealand and the Australian governments. We send 50 students a year to Australia, 35 to New Zealand. We also strongly support both the Fulbright scholarships to the US and the Chevening to the UK. And we've been identified as a point of contact for developing English language for successful study in these countries. I can keep talking forever, but...
Yeah, I know. What would you like Australian providers to know about Cambodian students?
They're probably the loveliest group of people that I've been privileged enough to work with. There's a teasing quality to Cambodians, which is very similar to Australia. Not so much the broader humour, but where the sense of humour is very similar. And once they trust you, they're just a lot of fun to work with. It can be frustrating when the cultures work at different pace in trying to achieve things, but they're just genuinely nice people, and they really want to learn. They're all hungry to improve their lives and see better futures for themselves and their families. And they're embracing this at a rate I've never seen before. Very quickly, we have over 100 universities within Phnom Penh. Not all of them are of the highest calibre, but some of them are. And this is reflected in the desire for education, for certification, for better jobs, for better lives. And Australia is identified as one of the places where, if they come to learn, this will help them achieve the goals for both themselves and their families.
Thank you, and I'll plug the CamTESOL conference here. I found it to be one of the most extraordinary experiences of my professional career, to be able to support the teaching staff in Cambodia. It's a great opportunity for you as teachers or managers, if you would like an opportunity to deliver and be part of an international conference in ASEAN. Talk to Ashley about getting involved with CamTESOL. Alex, you've been waiting very patiently. Alex contacted NEAS. I've seen Alex, the most times I've seen Alex is at CamTESOL. Alex is from Mahidol University in Thailand. They approached us a couple of years ago, didn't you? 2016.
Well, several years ago, when Mark Raven was still the CEO.
And I've been working with Alex and his team since then, and this year you became quality endorsed with NEAS. What does quality assurance mean in Thailand, and particularly for you and your centre? Because you're the first one in Thailand, and I must say, an excellent provider of English language tuition to your students?
Well, thank you for the question. And also, I'm glad to have an opportunity to speak after the rest of the panelists. There are a lot of parallels to what's going on in other ASEAN countries and what's going on in Thailand, but some major differences as well. Right now in Thailand, the fertility rate is quite low, about 1.5, and it has been for about 20 years. So we're seeing a lot fewer university-age students applying for higher studies. So I think this affects Australia as well. I know many Thai students choose to study in Australia, and really education in Thailand is becoming much more competitive. So unlike Vietnam, where you said 49%, only 49% of the students who applied were able to get places at universities, in Thailand there are many empty seats at universities. There are 170 universities in the country. And there was a recent article in the Bangkok Post saying that 3/4 of them, would be in danger of closing in the next several years. Now, of course, that is taking into account that the government may allow foreign universities to open branch campuses in the near future. So until now, that has not been possible. It may be, which actually could be good for the quality of education in the country, but it means a lot more competition. So back to your question about why we engaged in quality assurance and what that means to us. It really is a point of differentiation for us to be the first center in the country to have the NEAS quality endorsement. It's something that we can, to our executives, to the parents, to students, really to show that we are up to an international standard. And actually following up on what Ashley was saying, where sometimes the local requirements can be quite lax in many regards. And so really we want to do more than just comply with the laws and the regulations and requirements, and really look to improve the education that we offer to our students.
Thank you. And what can Australian providers, what can you share with them about Thai students?
Oh, that's quite interesting, because maybe I would, Ashley was saying how wonderful the Cambodian students are to work with. I think for anyone who's visited Thailand or worked with Thais, they're just wonderful, kind, warm people. And so I've been teaching in Thailand since 2005, and I can't say enough good things about the students. I think that for Australian providers, perhaps, again, there will be more competition for the Thai students. And actually, we are seeing more and more opportunities around ASEAN. I think there is more of an ASEAN identity, and maybe more competition within the region as well. But as several of the panelists mentioned, the Australian brand for education is quite strong in Thailand. It's quite well recognized. So I think that will certainly continue.
Well, that's a good message for all of us to take away. Let's keep the quality strong. And one of the ways that we, of course, can keep our quality strong is in participating in opportunities like this, the NEAS conference, and opportunities to share information and compare and realise we have more similarities than differences. So I really do appreciate the fact that you've all made the trek down under. Thank you so much, and thank you for participating in our panel. And I hope that you all get an opportunity to have a chat. I think most of you have all been teachers. Yes, Sean, have you? Well, Sean, you've got a lot to learn. So please take the opportunity to have a chat with our ASEAN +1 guests, and please thank them for attending and for being part of this panel this morning.